I am so freaking excited today to be here with Stacy Sawyer. If you don't know who Stacy Sawyer is, oh my gosh, are you in for a huge, gigantic treat today? Stacy Sawyer is from Stacy Sawyer Design and Educate. She helps interior designers streamline their systems through better understanding their tools. Oh my gosh, that hits me right in my stomach because that's so important and so important to me in my business. Stacy, I know that there's a particular tool that we're going to talk about today, and that is Photoshop. So first of all, thank you so much for being here. I really, really value your time and your expertise. You bring so much energy and magic to the room. I really appreciate you being here.
Of course, Katie, I'm happy to be here. Excited to talk about it.
Me too. Okay, let's dive right in. So today we're talking about Photoshop in particular. Why did we pick Photoshop to talk about? What's the big deal with that program?
So, Photoshop, I feel like, is one of those Adobe tools that a lot of photographers use. Use it to edit photos, touch up pictures, maybe magic erase somebody out of your photo that wasn't supposed to be there. But what interior designers, or what I teach a lot of interior designers to use it for, is to kind of magic erase some color, or maybe magic erase some carpet into some hardwood, or basically staging ideas, because a lot of times you explain something to a client and it's a bold choice, right? Maybe you suggest painting a house blue, or painting cabinets red, or something that they just can't visualize themselves. And you don't have the time to build a 3D model, or maybe you don't have the know-how to build a 3D model. This is fast, this is efficient, this is a quick way to give them kind of a preview of what it might look like and really kind of sell them on the idea. So if you want, I can share my screen and kind of walk you through the steps.
Yeah, I love what you're saying, because I think that a lot of time interior designers feel like in order to show a potential, or not potential, but to show a client what something will look like, it has to be a 3D rendering. And I love
Right,
what you're saying, because what you're saying is, no, it doesn't. That takes a
right.
lot of time. It's actually a very expensive thing to do. And what you're saying is, here's a tool that can do that faster and give the
Yeah,
same amount of valuable outcome to the client. And we're about faster and productivity and
efficient.
all and efficiency. Yeah, it's so important to be able to move projects along in a timely manner. So yeah, I would love it if you would share your screen and give us an example.
All right,
All right, let me allow
let's
you.
see. Get this opened up. All right. So what I have for you guys today is this house that I did some work on, and the homeowner, this is all painted, and they were looking for a fresh coat. They're looking for a fresh change. We were talking about maybe possibly a two-tone idea. So without kind of taking away too much of the charm, I tried some different options. Now, this is just the basic Photoshop interface, and this was just me on my way out the door, turning around, snapping a picture after they went back inside. So this is something that they don't even know I did, but I was going to pull together some images and get some paint colors for them, but I knew I would have to convince them about this whole two-tone idea that I had going on. So with a series of filter adjustments, and I'm just in the basic layer panel, I kind of created these folder options here where I could, put on a door, put on a front face, and I was really looking at doing something in the forefront here. So as you can see, when I turn these layers on, you can see a more cherry
Oh,
color. You
wow.
can see black garage doors and maybe a black pop out here. That was punchy, a little bit more modern. My second option here was much more of a monochromatic look, if they were into it, but this would require painting the entire house instead of just the couple of pop outs. But again, you can see the difference in just seeing the house as it was in this. This is much easier for the homeowner to look at and say, oh, wow, okay, so we could be the gray black house on the block and not this giant, original cherry color that they had going on here. And it was weathered, winded. I mean, the house is older. And then we tried some other color combinations, but it's about doing the right work at the right time, right? You don't have the time, the money to build, you don't want to build somebody for building a 3D model, and I don't have the time to spend on it. This is a quick decision. This is me getting a price for some contractors on some painting options, but this lets the homeowner kind of decide, could I do this two-tone? Could I do it all one color? Should we change the garage doors? And it's a couple of Photoshop. It's, a couple of tricks in Photoshop to get them to sell on the idea. So something like this is, again, a photo tool, but for interior design purposes, whether it's inside or outside, whether I'm painting a carpet or painting a tile floor or cabinets. Sometimes it's just taking a couple of shots while you're visiting with a client, doing a site evaluation, taking it home, maybe 30 minutes on the computer, playing with some layers, playing with some filters, and you've got them looking at a version of their kitchen or a version of their house that they feel better about making that punchy decision.
What's amazing about this tool and what you're showing us right now is how fast you can get such a profound outcome. Meaning,
Right.
how fast, and I would love for you to show us also how fast this actually is, in a second. And with such little effort, you can get such valuable outcomes for your client, meaning for them to be able to see three different options of the way that their home could look is an incredibly valuable visualizing tool for them, because most people can't visualize this. I'm a designer. I have my master's degree in architecture. I've been a designer for 15 years. I sometimes have trouble visualizing, in your example, paint colors and all the things.
Yeah,
So,
as do I.
right. And so this is even a great tool to use as a design tool for yourself to be able to visualize your own ideas and things that you have in mind.
Correct. Yeah, even me suggesting some of these colors, you kind of want to take the temperature yourself and say, does this
Exactly.
really work? Does this look good? Before I show it to them, before I tell them to paint their entire house black. But what you were talking about, how fast is it? I mean, Photoshop is largely based on just the selection set, kind of what you pick. And then you paint specifically what you pick. So I like to use filter adjustments, and filter adjustments are easy because you can turn them on and off, and you can always go back and adjust them. So something as simple in this option as just changing the color hue or what's going on behind. You see that pop of the color on
I
the
was
front of the
just gonna
house?
say, Stacy, can we make one section pink and show us how to do it?
Oh
So,
yeah. So I went with, their normal color that they had, but if we really wanted to go with something pistachio, no, if they wanted to really be the house on the corner that had a jazzy front, color. Easy, easy play. And the way the filter adjustment works is I'm not just painting a flat color, it's actually got some opacity in there. So you're seeing the wood grain underneath. You're seeing the lines of the beadboard or whatever the material is behind it. So it's believable that you didn't just take a magic marker and cover over it.
it's, to my knowledge, the most quick way to get the most realism.
Yes. Yes. So,
Because
I mean, toning it
the
down, doing
alternative,
great.
sorry, the alternative from here is to, sketch it and watercolor it, and we all know that
Mm-hmm.
that takes hours. And the realism in a watercolor drawing, or marker color drawing, is extremely low. And then the opposite end of that spectrum is to build a 3D model and pull it into 3D Max, and pull it into all the plugins that have the lighting and the shadows and that layer of realism, and that takes hours and hours and hours and hours just to render it after it's built. So I think that this is, I really believe it. This is the fastest way to get the most realism.
Agreed. And what happens when you build that fancy model and they say, maybe we go a couple of shades lighter, maybe we go a couple of shades darker? You saw me do that in seconds, just
Second,
change the whole color palette. So
yes,
this is something that I could sit there with them if they were, we really like option two, we need a couple, maybe just tweak it a little bit. You get on the phone with them and you have a live call like you and I are doing, and you change that slider and kind of walk through it. And
yeah,
they can literally sit there and watch and make some live decisions and say, yep, no, I'm going to go with my gut. This color feels right. But they see it, and they're invested in it.
right. And actually, earlier today, quite literally earlier today, I had a design meeting with a client. We use Photoshop in our office as our design tool and as our presentation tool, just like you're showing here. And I have for 15 years. Just today, I had a design presentation with a client, and she said, I think I love the dining room exactly as it is. I really would like to see the chairs black instead of wood. And there was a part of me that was like, okay, in our next meeting, we'll have a meeting to now look at those new chair options. And I
Right.
quickly was like, oh, in Photoshop, I'll just change the layer. And we pulled out our computer and right there live in Photoshop, switched the chairs, and we were able to make a decision quickly without scheduling a whole other meeting just to look at the chair
Sure.
options. So that
Right.
live look at it in meetings and switch things out in meetings live is a game changer in streamlining and creating uh less work with the same amount of outcomes.
And this is an easy tool. I mean, Photoshop is a beast of a software, but I'm only playing with a few things here. This is literally just selecting the right things, and there's a few selection modes, and you can go through it and touch it up to make sure you get it right. But then you just play with the color. You play with the I'm literally just playing with saturation, the colors from the rainbow, and how light or dark something is to kind of really pull things in.
So easy.
It's a few tasks. It's not,
So
you don't have to
doable.
know the ins and outs of Photoshop to do something like this.
So doable for anybody at any level of tech expertise. Stacy, you happen to be the expert of all experts as it relates to Photoshop and other interior design tools, which is why you literally teach the subject. um, can you take a minute to show us actually some tools, how to use them? Maybe two or three?
Sure. So if I was to do some sort of selecting on here, I'm going to turn all these off. This is my base layer 0. So this is the original picture kind of as I took it. But a lot of the selection modes are kind of right up here on top. And this is your basic tool palette up here on the left. And a lot of times I'm, going back and forth between my different types of lasso. These tools, you can do them kind of freehand. The Polygon Lasso is really nice because it's about polygons. So
What
for
does a
interior
lasso do?
design,
What does a lasso
it's
do?
it's drawing a circle around something and kind of picking an area you're going to select. The Polygon Lasso, though, is straight, kind of like a polygon, right? It's made up of lines. Works perfect for architecture. So it works perfect for straight lines because it's less organic here when I'm trying to pick things. So if I was to scroll into this house, and you can see my picture, not all that clear, that's okay. Because when I zoom out and when I'm looking at, I'm really just trying to capture the color change that's happening. So I like to call these the little marching ants. These little marching ants are kind of calling out, this is what we picked. We picked this window, and easy enough to kind of scroll in and scroll out and look at kind of what you've picked. One of the things I end up doing is putting this on its own layer. So this filter adjustment, these icons down here, I tend to go through and walk everybody through what they're for. But here's all of those items that you'd want to look through. Now, what I've been doing this whole time is just playing with the hue and saturation. So that plays with the color tones, right? Picks a color from the rainbow, how bright or how dark, how light or how dark. But something like filling it with a pattern. So filling it with any predefined pattern, whether it's grass or trees or something of the like, you could do it with a pattern. You could do it with a color. So a lot of times this is how I'll get hardwood floors to pop in. So I'll go
Does
through and
Photoshop,
redefine.
sorry to interrupt you, does
Nope.
Photoshop come preloaded with these filters or are these ones you've added?
So Photoshop comes with like these standard trees, grass, and water. And that's what I have loaded on here today. But I tend to, over time, have collected my own menu of different woods, carpet, fabric, leather, things that kind of look and feel different. And a lot of times I'll go to a lumber place and just take my own photos or capture things that I know clients are picking if we're deciding between, a zebra wood or a teak wood or something else. So I can really kind of show the difference of the different color grains and, the different attributes of each material. Because I think that plays a huge factor in seeing something in a showroom and then seeing it on your screen, because then they're like, oh, wow, so that's like the actual color. That's how big the grain is. Things like that. Because I could pick this, crazy grass pattern here, but depending on the size of the pattern is how big or how small something is. So, you pick out a tiny tile in the store and the client doesn't realize how much of a repeat of that they'll really be. So in a kitchen, you take a picture of a kitchen and you Photoshop in some tile, you might not love this tile, but what if we found something bigger and it had a larger repeat and bigger tiles. So even just being able to scale your pattern. And I'm getting a live preview here, kind of showing them what this would look like if we had it smaller, if we had it larger. Now, this is just an arbitrary material in here, but you can define your own patterns on here in minutes. So it's easy to kind of curate your own library and gather things that you want to use. Because if you're doing this a lot, you end up showing people hardwoods, showing people carpet, showing people fabrics. So you tend to collect these images. And before you know it, you've got your own library of things that are go-to.
Just like learning any tool, right? The longer you're doing it, the more fast you get at it and the more you are equipped to work with it and use it to your advantage in a way that's faster than when you're just starting out. So, can you show us what it looks like to change the opacity of something? You mentioned that earlier, and I want to make sure that people can see what that tool looks like, how to do it.
Sure. So for this particular pattern, I just popped in over these windows. When you do a filter adjustment, it creates its own little layer, which is perfect because for me, I'm an organization person. So I would name this,
Same.
window option. And that way I know that's what that is about. Now, this particular layer right here, it's got a few controls with it, right? So there's an opacity right in here. And this opacity decides how much or how little of the pattern I can see. So you can see it as I slide it around here, how much behind the window you can actually see. So if I was going to do some like fake sheer curtains on the wall, I could kind of give the illusion of you can see through it, you can see behind it. But a pattern is solid versus my hue saturation, my changing of colors, that's still allowing me to see my picture below it.
Yeah, that
But
was
it's
what was
nice.
allowing the texture of the wood to come through the color, which was adding that layer of realism.
Yes, yes, 100%. But the nice thing about these filter adjustments is this is sitting right here, just like I did with the color. I can come back here, open this up and pick something else
Mhm.
and change the scale. So it's very easy to make edits on the fly when you're in a meeting with somebody to say, how about this one? How about that one? You have all your patterns ready to go lined up. So if they don't like this couch pattern or they don't like this carpet or this wood, well, let's see it in the teak and let's see it in the, the bronze or the metallic champagne or whatever the finishes are that you're looking at. Having all those kind of built into your library and ready to go, it's very easy to do a live design to help somebody kind of figure out a choice, a selection.
Can you show us how that works on a piece of furniture?
Sure, a piece of furniture. So if I probably would do it with the hue saturation the same way I'm doing it with the house. So we would do it with one of these filter adjustments down here. So let's see, I'm going to open up one of these that's got this particular guy here. Make sure this option's turned on so we can see it. And this is the black pop out here. So something like this to change a color, I can easily do that with adjusting this filter adjustment. So just like you saw that little snippet here of this little piece of grass, it's the same idea here. This is the icon for a filter adjustment through hue saturation. So when I double click on this, it pulls up my list of hue, saturation, and lightness. And pulling these colors is going to allow me to change these. So once I amp up the saturation, you can see all the different colors appearing. When you pull out all the saturation, all the actual color from the rainbow comes out, and you're just dealing with gray tones, which worked for this option. But for a couch or something else that maybe had a pattern, I'd probably stick with patterns and paint that on, whether it be top down, looking at a bird's eye view, a floor plan of a couch or something like that. Or if I had it in a perspective view, kind of like how we're looking at the house right here, I would paint the material on there, but have some sort of my fabric is going to have a little bit of a robust look to it because it's material, right? So it feels like something. It's not just a flat color. So I'm not going to pick a pattern online that is just a flat, like a tile pattern. I'm going to look through upholsteries and probably capture my own picture after I've looked at the physical pictures or the physical fabrics at my desk, after I've ordered samples. Then I can actually use that and create a pattern and fill it with a pattern. If it was just a color, the color of your chair, the stubble that's coming through, like the rub of your chair, you can see that, just like you can see this wood here. So that's easy enough for me to suggest, you know, a burnt orange chair or a pink chair or a blue chair just by changing, trying to play with our faces here to get them out of the way so you guys can see the screen. Um, but changing these different colors, changing the saturation on the slider here, and it's very intuitive as kind of how much color, how dark, how robust the color is versus which color are you pulling from versus how light or how dark the color is. Obviously, something electrifying, it's too much. It's not realistic, right? You know, no things in color have that much color, or no things in the real world have that much color unless it's a marker or something, you know, like a plastic or, but something like this for a piece of furniture, it's a matter of going around and selecting. Now, you can see it here. There's obviously, this is pixelated. I took it from my phone standing on the street. You know, I'm working around this tree here, but when you stand back here, that kind of detail is not as important. You're seeing the bigger picture of, wow, my house is painted green. Could we really go with that kind of color? You're seeing a little bit of detail in behind it, right? Because you're seeing that shadow. I'm pointing as if you can see where I'm pointing. You're seeing that shadow right on the corner of the house, right? So you're seeing it's dark here, you're seeing it's light here, you're keeping all that.
And that
Versus if I
shadow is
just,
coming from the original picture and just the filter being a low opacity so that the shadow's coming through, right?
correct, correct. Because if I turn this off, if I turn this particular option off, this is the original picture right here.
Mhm.
So I'll slide this up so you can see the layers. This is the original photo down here. So this original photo has this kind of harsh corner right here, the lighter on the side, the darker on this side. It has all that, those attributes in the photo that I took itself. So when I paint something over it like an adjustment layer, this inherently has an opacity that goes along with it. So changing this is keeping all those shadows. It's keeping the texture. It's keeping everything behind it instead of just painting it. I'll show you what it would look like if I just painted, so you can kind of appreciate the difference. So if I just chose the selection set, right? This is kind of what I painted green before. If I was to just fill this with a color and thought, oh, I want to fill it with a color, you lose all that with just a color, right? You lose the shadows, you lose the boards. This is just kind of like painting. And I think this is where people get, oh, I don't know if I can do this. This is Photoshop. This doesn't look accurate. It's just picking the right option, right? Because easy enough, sliding that hue and saturation around, I was easy enough to paint a color versus
Right,
this is just filling with a color.
right,
We're not painting.
right.
We're changing the tone of what's already there.
Okay, so you're bringing up a really important point, which is it's important to know a particular tool inside Photoshop that can get you an outcome you want in the shortest amount of time, which I know is your area of expertise when you work with interior designers. Can you show us an overview of like the top 5 tools inside Photoshop that you get to know in order to be the fastest at interior design related Photoshop?
Sure.
Like if
So
you
when
know
you
these
open
5
up,
tools, you're set up well.
okay. So when you open up Photoshop and you have this interface in front of you, have your menus going on up top. You always have this menu coming down on the left-hand side. And one of them that I always, these are your main selection tools. So this is just your move tool. So if I was, I'm going to reel this up over here and make it nice and neat. So this is my background image. If I was to move this, I'm only going to move something if I'm on that layer. So this right option here, having these layers open, is huge because this lets you know what you're moving and what layer you're on. And I just got to move this. There it is. So if your layer isn't on for some reason, if you look over on the right and all you see is color or swatches, you see all these other things and you're like, I don't see layers. She's talking about layers. Layers is a window. So under your window menu is kind of listing out everything you could turn on or off. So this is kind of like a good starting point to set up how you want your screen to look. Because the easier you are to get acclimated with where things are located, the faster you're going to work. So setting up your workspace and turning on your layers, knowing that those are on, a lot of these things when you download Photoshop for the first time, you can set up. And that way, every time you open a Photoshop, they're here. Your layers are here, your menus are here, colors are here, everything you typically are looking for.
And
So
once you
with
set that up, Photoshop remembers that and stays that way.
correct. So it's kind of like setting up your workspace here. So My layers are on. I know where to find my photo because when this whole thing comes in, I just have layer 0 sitting there with my photo. So I'll start to collect layers as I do work on this photo. So the move tool was something where you can literally pick up and move anything you select. So right now the picture is the only thing sitting here, and this kind of checkerboard material behind me is my blank canvas, right? So I'm kind of stacking things, stacking films, stacking bushes, stacking colors on top of this original picture. But this original picture is always at the bottom, right? Because I always need to come back and reference, what did it look like to begin with? Sometimes I'll go even beyond and cut things out. So I'll always keep a copy of that original layer down here. But that's my layer 0 down here at the bottom. These few tools right here are all selection tools. I'm going to move us over here now. So if you're just picking a basic shape, square or an ellipse that you can get your circle or anything like that, you're using these types of tools. So again, it's just selecting. Photoshop is hugely just about selecting. Now you'll notice every time I drag a box, the other one disappears. That's just because of my selection type mode that I'm looking at. So right here, I have the types of ways that I can select things. I can select something new every time. I can add to my selection. I can do a subtract from my selection, and then I can do an intersection. So a lot of times you're doing a new selection and then adding to it. So if I'm getting this window, getting that window, it's maybe a little bit of getting detailed with the work, kind of trying to figure out what do I want to capture. I really want to capture, this garage door. And that's going to be something that I'm going to highlight or change here. And then I decide, well, I want to add to it. I want the door and this door to be the same color. So it's adding the selection. So that way you'll notice my box didn't go away this time. Now I'm just kind of doing these selection sets. These work great. Maybe I missed a little. Maybe when I zoom in, I realized, look, I've captured a little bit of the bush. I didn't mean to do that. Do I have to start over? No. That's what these other types of magic tools are for. The quick selection tool is actually pretty great. It's kind of like a giant paintbrush. Again, it's a selection tool. It's a way to pick things. So I take my fancy paintbrush here and I'm going to add to the selection. So if I add to the selection, I'm pushing the ants further onto the bush and I say, wrong direction. I meant to subtract. So I subtract ants from this. Now, the Polygon Lasso, the one that was the straight lines, that helped me, but this is not so straight, right? This kind of got a little bit organic. So maybe I just kind of want to nudge the ants up a little bit more. This is easy enough to go edit after the fact, right? To come in and make sure you got it looking good. I always say, get in there nice and tight, because when you zoom out, you won't see that nitty-gritty detail, but you can appreciate, you got close enough. And working far out here, I'm going to push it, too far. And now I'm missing parts. But when I get in here, when I get in here and I add to this selection and I push this down kind of just where I need it to be, then I know I've got a better selection set. If you have a better selection set, what you're painting is going to come out better.
That's how
what you're deleting, what you're editing.
That's how you achieve that layer of realism.
Oh, yes. Yes, 100%. Because then it actually looks kind of more realistic, what you're trying to communicate. So a lot of these selection tools right here. Basic cropping. Cropping works well if you're literally just trying to crop something in your photo. So if I just want to work in a smaller palette, I can kind of, just like any cell phone or anything like that, where you're cropping something. It's not inherently the first tool. And you think Photoshop, it's photo, I'm cropping it. Shouldn't it be right at the top? Shouldn't it be easy to find? And it's not sometimes, which is fine because it's right here. It's the fourth tool down. But one of the things that I think is wildly overlooked inside of crop is this straighten tool. Now, straighten is pretty cool because if you're in the crop tool, this menu kind of changes. I don't know if you noticed that as I was clicking around, this top menu here kind of changes as you're clicking through these tools, because these are a couple little, you can tweak this, you can tweak that. Crop tool, though, that has this straighten feature in here that if you took something and you're trying to capture the living room straight on or the horizon straight on, or their island, you want it to be straight across and you're standing kind of a little bit crooked or to the side, You can draw with this straighten tool and tell your picture, I meant for this garage door. Wait, pan over here. I meant for this garage door. This right here is supposed to be straight. And it takes your picture and tweaks it ever so slightly to make it so that that line that you drew is now straight. And now my picture has been shifted ever so slightly. So this is the straight piece of it. So again, you're standing in the kitchen, you don't have like the perfect shot. You come home, you tweak the shot, you fix it so the island's perfectly straight. You add some colors. It's not long before you're doing just a couple of edit tools and what am I doing? I'm cropping, I'm straightening it, I'm adding some color, I'm picking some things to change colors of things. And really it's just to get my client on board with my vision, because they can't read plans, they can't see what I have in my head. Maybe I scribbled something on a napkin, but it's in black and white. You really think the cabinet bottoms should be blue and then this should be white. And let me give you an idea of what that's going to look like. Because that's a commitment, right? You're spending their money and you're doing work in their house and they want to be sure. And you can come home and play around with this for 20-30 minutes and have a couple of iterations to show them. They're appreciative of your time. They're appreciative of the fact that you were able to mock this up. They have no idea how long it took you. They have no idea you were able to do it fast, but it makes your better use of your time.
I love this, and I think that this is heading in a direction of our conversation that I think is really, really worth talking about here. So first of all, thank you so much for this sort of like crash course intro to Photoshop and showing the like general capabilities of what it can do. I've been using Photoshop for 15 years at least, and I learned several new things here today that I didn't know before. So thank you for your expertise with this, because I considered myself somewhat of a Photoshop expert and just learned at least 10 new things from this quick little intro that you did. I also want to mention one thing, and that is for Photoshop beginners, if you hover over a tool, you saw when Stacy was hovering over things, it gives you a little like, hey, here's what I do, which I think is really helpful. And even that even gives you a little quick video intro.
It does.
What it does. So that's an incredible thing that Photoshop does. Stacey, if you would please stop sharing your screen, and I would love to talk about why it's important for interior designers to give their clients a visualization of, what they intend with the design.
I think a lot of times designers, I even forget myself sometimes. You're living in this world of like furniture and picking things out and taking down walls and making big decisions. The end user that you're talking to, this is their first renovation, or this is their first restaurant, or this is their first build out, and they don't know what they're looking at. They aren't thinking about the big picture and how one thing might affect something else. And you do, and you can kind of foresee, if we take this wall down, the line of sight is captured all the way through. You can draw them perspectives and you can, sketch things out, but maybe you're not good hand drawing. You don't have to be an artist to be able to communicate an idea. I do better on the computer myself than I do hand drawing. But at the end of the day, if I can communicate a few quick ideas to them visually and say, if we take this wall down, these are the benefits. This is a $20, $30, $50, $100,000 decision that they're making. It's not always just a paint color. It's a big decision and they need to kind of see it. And there's plenty of tools like you talked about with, 3D Max and Revit and everything that we can kind of show them to build this out. And maybe that's a road that you head down when you're making more detailed decisions and you're spending those kinds of money and you've made that commitment. But just, do we open the wall or do we not open the wall? That's something you could probably figure out from just kind of making some Photoshop tweaks or some quick computer markups and editing a PDF to kind of, well, if we open this up, sometimes I'm even just playing around in a PDF and it's flat, it's a very flat drawing. And you're looking down on it and saying, look how much more seating we can add to the living room if we just open this wall up and kind of do a built-in kitchen instead, a little breakfast nook in the corner. They just need to see it. They can't imagine without it. They lived in this house for 30 years. I can't imagine not having that wall there, but you open it up to the idea of, what you could fit in there or how that might look. I think that helps the end user put their faith in you, put the faith in the decisions or the ideas that you're coming up with, because you're just shouting out these colors, and we have some thought process behind the whole color theory and why we're suggesting certain things, but until they see it in front of them, or understand how saturated a color is when they say, I want these walls red. Well, this room is really small. We want to make it feel larger, and that idea of, painting a ceiling versus painting the side walls, and how to make something feel wider or taller.
You know,
They
I
need some guidance.
love what you're talking about, and I think it's incredibly important. And one of the questions, as an interior design business coach, that I get a lot from interior designers is, how do I do it so that the client doesn't change their mind so often, or question everything that I'm doing, and say, okay, what is your presentation tool? What are you showing them? And a
Right.
lot of times I see interior designers use something like Keynote or PowerPoint to pull things together. And while that's also a great presentation tool, what I have often seen is that it's a picture of a chair next to a picture of a table, next to a picture of a paint swatch or a materials, pattern.
Hmm.
And what
And
I
where's their house? Where's their room in context?
Exactly. And so then,
Yeah.
of course, a client is going to be wishy-washy on decision making and change their mind a lot because they don't understand the big picture of how it all
Right.
works. And I think that Photoshop, what we're seeing and what you're discussing here is that Photoshop is an incredible tool to be able to see that big picture, which eliminates a lot of the struggle with decision making. Wouldn't you agree?
Sure. Oh, yeah. And even when you're down the road and you pick the paint color that you loved on the keynote or the PowerPoint, and this all looks really great together. But in my kitchen, wow, the way the light comes in on this room, that's a really bright color. Or, ooh, I wish we did the other wall. You could have showed them the other wall in 6 iterations in Photoshop in 20 minutes, and they felt better about the decision that they made.
Yeah, that's a great example too. A great example too. Stacy, what do you think in terms of what is the difference? I'm hoping I'm positioning this question so that you answer it in the way that I want. What do you think is the difference between like a beginner designer and a designer who's really good at presentation to the client?
Okay. A beginner designer, I think, is somebody who has a lot of great ideas. They're passionate, they're interested, they're motivated, but I think the struggle, I think, for a new designer is the correct communication tool and how to show that. Um, I think you have this passion. I mean, you and I, obviously, Katie, we're like we like interior design. We're passionate about spaces and making spaces more comfortable for people and how they use them. And I think there's others like us who have this desire, who have great ideas. But if you can't get that on paper, if you can't help somebody else see your vision, that's where that next level designer comes in. That's where that designer is able to show a design, show an idea, pick out pieces and put it in context. Somebody always says, what's this word? I've never heard this word, use it in a sentence. The same idea. Here's this chair. Let me see it in my kitchen. I mean, Wayfair and Target are doing it with their app, and they're like, see the stool, let's use augmented reality, and you pop, there's a stool in your kitchen. I mean, the box stores are coming up with it and they're doing it. So it's almost like we need to step it up and say, if Target can throw a little stool in your kitchen, we should be able to paint some color on these
For
cabinets and
free.
give you an idea for free. Yeah, right. They're doing it as just part of their app that you're using anyways. We're doing much bigger things that you can't return this later. You can't put that wall up later. We're going to take it down. Let's have an idea of what you might see.
Exactly, exactly. I love the way that you answered that question. And it was exactly what I was hoping you would say. It's so much about the tools that you have in your system of the way that you do work that sets you apart, that takes you to the next caliber, that allows you to deliver excellence to your clients. And it has so much to do with tools, and to your point, so much to do with being good at your tools. Stacey, I know that a lot of interior designers don't know what options for tools exists for them.
Correct.
in the way that would work for them in particular. Is there any offer you may want to make to the audience that may support them with understanding what tools might be a good fit for their area of expertise, their business, their...
Sure. Yeah. So I think a strategic kind of call with a new client or somebody to kind of get an understanding of what their business is, what types of experience they have with software, if any, or with none, or kind of where to begin. You know, if this is just a passion for theirs and they don't even know kind of where do I even begin with software. You know, I'm probably going to say, let's get some graph paper and a pencil and start there. But to understand kind of what their goal is, you know, what are they trying to learn, what is their business. I mean, if they've gone to you for coaching, they have kind of a plan in mind, but now what do I need to know? And do you need to know all of these tools? No. Do we need to know a little bit of everything? Yeah, I think a little bit of everything kind of helps use your time more efficiently, because if you're spending, you know, countless hours just beating your head trying to figure out Photoshop or SketchUp or AutoCAD or any one of these tools, the things that I show you are fast turnaround, less work, pack more punch in your presentation, give your client more to chew on. Don't wait weeks to give this really elaborate design that really focuses on the color red, and you just find out that they don't like red. And you spent days curating this presentation. Show a little bit, a little bit, a little bit. And it's a little bit of software. It's a little bit of black and white. It's a little bit of a perspective. It's a little bit of a Photoshop markup. Small little tidbits to kind of get you going and get better answers, get right work at the right time, get better answers and feedback from them. So that way you're building towards a bigger picture design, and they say, wow, they can see the journey that the decisions took, and they understand why we started here and how we ended up here. And they know that they're spending good money on somebody who's curating these ideas and tying it all together.
You know, you very no big deal touched on something extraordinarily important, and that is, and I just want to sort of like highlight that right here for our viewer, and that is the importance of needing to be able to put together presentations very, very quickly, because to your point, client can easily say, I don't like red, and now you need to redo everything. And if redoing everything means 4 days worth of work, the profitability of the business just went.
Yeah. You just took your hourly rate and it plummeted, because now you spend how much time on something. So it's how much can I give you just to kind of keep these decisions moving and get a clearer picture of what you're looking for.
Yeah. Stacy, is that something that you would be willing to offer our audience by way of a one-on-one call with you to support them in discovering what tool would be best for their business?
Of course, I would love to. And as you can see, I talk with my hands. So I'm very much like, let's explain it and walk through it. But I do, I have a chat feature on my website where you can go and book some time with me and talk to me, you know, another person here in the trenches of interior design, and kind of figure out what you're missing. You know, how do we take your design status to the next level? How do we amplify this business so you're utilizing your time more efficiently and you're making more money?
That is so generous of you, Stacy. Thank you so much for loving on our audience that way with your generous offer of time to support people in decision making. Where can people go to find that link to book that with you?
Sure, you can find me stacysawyer.net, and on Instagram it's Stacy Sawyer Designer, and I post a lot of my class materials there. You know, all of my designs that I'm working on campus. I'm the campus interior designer for UMass Lowell. So a lot of my stuff is real live. How do we make these student spaces more engaging? So it's for sure active stuff. And, you know, I'd love to chat and network with other designers, because a lot of times we all learn from each other. So
And I want to make sure it's very, very clear to our audience that Stacy is hireable for what I'll call like tutoring. That is not the right word. No, I want to take that back. It's not tutoring, because that sounds like small support. Stacy has incredible educational programming, better said, to support you in learning tools, discovering which tool is best for you, and then learning that tool. And she is a incredible expert in her tools. I mean, like I said, I've been doing Photoshop for 15 years. I just learned at least 10 things that she just shared with us. I'm
That's so great.
like taking notes. I'm like, oh, filter tool, that works better than what I've been doing. So if you feel, dear audience, if you feel the call to get better and faster at your tools, and make sure you have the right tool for your business in the season that you're in right now with the clients that you're in, please reach out to Stacy. She is an incredibly valuable resource in this direction, and I know can support you really fabulously. And I will post all her links and everything in the show notes. You can grab those there. Please post in the comments what tools you're already using for presentation so that Stacy and I can understand where you are with your presentation tools. And so we can take the pulse of our audience to see what the more common one is. And let us know in the comments if you already are using Photoshop or if you desire to use Photoshop. We would be fascinated to know. And as you know, I respond to every single comment in there. So I'd be happy to see your comment. Stacy, is there any closing wisdom you want to leave us with today?
I would say what I typically say to a lot of students who maybe come into my class, if I'm hosting a larger class or just one-on-one and have this, I don't know where to begin, and I'm really not good with computers, or, they hear about this software, whether it's a Photoshop or a SketchUp or an AutoCAD, and it feels robust, right? It feels like a big, scary thing to learn. A lot of things are very, simplified of kind of start with this, start with this, start with that. Don't shy away from learning something that's going to make your time more efficient. That's going to make you work faster. I know you're all out there with burning interior design passion, and I'd love to help you guys kind of figure out how to work more efficiently and get your designs, better communicated to your clients.
Amazing. And better communication is such an important goal, no matter what level of business that you're in, just starting out or in business for 100 years. Getting better at communication is always something that can be sought after.
Yeah.
Stacy, thank you times a million for your time today and for nurturing the audience with your expertise and your love and your care and your passion. It was amazing to watch you in action in Photoshop. Very inspiring as well. So thank you so much for being here and
Yeah.
delivering.
Of course. Thanks for having me. I'm excited. So yeah, thanks for having me.
All right. Bye, everybody. Until next time.